Hey everybody, KSA Kris, Real Estate Blitz here. What's going on? Got a great question. Let me pull it up real quick. Here it is. It says, "Hi Chris, I know this might be an odd question, but what are you reading or listening to right now that helps you in your business?" Jason W. I did a video a little while back, and I think I don't know when I posted it, but I did a video a little while back, and it talked about some of the things on podcasts. I love podcasts. I do a ton of listening, but I also do a ton of reading. I try to read 2 to 3 books a month. I sit down and do critical listening. It's a skill I sort of picked up. So in another lifetime, years and years ago, I was a musician, and I was playing professionally. And when I was going to school to be a musician as well, one of the big things that they always pushed on was critical listening. And this was back in the days with I don't know if you all remember the VHS tape, but before VHS, I think it was called. It wasn't Beta. It was something else. It was some other goofy thing. But we had all these tapes at the school I was at, and I was there for quite a while. And every day it was a requirement that we did critical listening. Now, when I was younger, I didn't really appreciate it. But when I got older, I realized how important it was. Critical listening, no matter how good you are or how skilled you are, and I'll roll in reading as well. If you're trying to make decisions or growth or trying to get better at something that you're doing, and you're not putting other things inside of you, you're basically failing through success. You're learning through failure, which is part of being an entrepreneur. So I want to start and caveat with that too. The stuff I'm going to talk about, I don't just view what I'm reading, what I'm listening to based off of real estate. I'm an entrepreneur. Real estate happens to be the commodity that I deal in. That's my passion. But if I was in to selling oranges, my next door neighbor, who's extremely wealthy, he's doing very well. He owns fruit stands. They're really high end fruit stands in a lot of the more expensive areas of San Diego. Padres baseball season, but he owns a lot of these really high end fruit stands, and it's just a commodity. An entrepreneur is looking at it. Doesn't matter what you're in. If it's paint, and I'm just looking around my room right now. If it's pens, I got this killer pen in the mail, and I ended up buying some. It's just a process. Whether it's this is probably the most unique and mind-blowing situation. Really not very good headphones, from what I've read, but billion-dollar business cans, and of course I usually have one of these. So it really doesn't matter what it is. It's just a commodity. It's part of it, or even like these jerseys. And realizing that it's an entrepreneur behind all of the products that people consume, like real estate, which is what I'm in, that make your business. So I read a lot of stuff that's either entrepreneur based, some stuff that's real estate based. I do a lot of self-improvement stuff, because I know I have shortfalls, or I don't always focus a lot on my shortfalls. I actually focus more on my strengths. Whatever I'm good at, I'm trying to become better at what I'm good at. And I focus a lot of my energy on that. So I figured real quick I would do one for you, Jason. And the easiest way for me to do it is to just go through my phone. I do a lot of my stuff. I have an iPad Pro that I work with a lot. My phone, I do pretty much all my reading on both. I do have some books. I got bookshelves. I got one in here and one in the office and one at home. But let me go through my list. And actually, I got one up from last night that I was listening to. So if you're on my personal page, my friends, if you're watching this, you know that just about every night I'm posting up something that I'm reading or something I'm listening to. But last night I was listening to a killer podcast, and it's called The School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. Lewis Howes came out with a book. Every time I've tried to buy it, it was sold out. I ended up ordering it online, but pretty fantastic. So I'll go through the stuff I'm listening to first. So if you don't know what a podcast is, you can go back down through my feed on Facebook, and I put up a couple things on podcasts and why I think podcasts are important. I believe podcasts for entrepreneurs are just average people. Anybody that wants to do anything, there's a podcast out there for it. I mean, whatever you're into, there's a podcast. Podcast is, in my opinion, the new radio. Radio, I can't tell you the last time I listened to the radio. It doesn't make sense anymore. I sit down, I listen to a podcast. I listen to a minimum of 1 podcast per day. I try to do 2 podcasts per day. Each podcast is anywhere from a half hour to an hour. Last night, the one I listened to was like an hour and a half. but it's just a ton of great information. So podcasts that I'm listening to right now, and I've through the years I've listened to a lot more, but right now I'm listening to, let me work down these. So there's a podcast out there. It's a guy reading the entire book of The Art of War. I listen to that probably every 3 months or so. So I have that podcast in my phone. Right now I'm listening to John Maxwell, A Minute with Maxwell. It's a real quick, down and dirty, in your face. He talks through a minute, 2 minutes of just whatever it is that's on his mind. It's pretty good. So if you've never listened to or read, if you've never read anything on Dale Carnegie, I'm a massive fan. I think any entrepreneur that's kind of worth their salt, they've read Dale Carnegie's stuff. It is timeless. You're talking about a guy that wrote stuff a long time ago, and it's still so extremely relevant. Entrepreneur on Fire. Entrepreneur on Fire is pretty interesting. It's a very wide berth type thing, and it talks about entrepreneurship. It talks a lot about podcasting and what's out there, adjustment, but it also goes deep into kind of what made people get to where they are. So that's a good one. Tony Robbins, the Tony Robbins podcast. That one, and I have 2 Tony Robbins podcasts on here. The Tony Robbins podcast and Unshakable by Tony Robbins. I haven't listened to a whole lot on there just because most of the stuff that he's podcasting about I don't personally connect with, so it doesn't do a lot for me. The Online Marketing Show and Duct Tape Marketing. Duct Tape Marketing is a book. There's I think it's a series of 3 right now. But I'm a huge fan of the Duct Tape Marketing books. I found the Marketing podcast. It's kind of unique because it really talks, it goes in depth. This is where I think real estate agents go wrong. So Jason was, real estate agent. He's reaching out to me. I think where a lot of real estate agents go wrong is they don't take cues from multi-billion-dollar businesses on how to market. And I think real estate agents are stuck into this really small-minded mindset of how they think or how they were told. I remember our first broker. We're like, hey, we don't have any deals. What do we do? How do we get business? Oh, you just grab some water and donut holes, and if you go stand on that corner over there, you'll own that market in like 2 years. What? Could you ever imagine seeing Target or Walmart doing that? That's just the goofiest thing ever, my opinion. Grant Cardone. I have 2 from Grant Cardone, Real Estate Investing and the Cardone Zone. Grant Cardone, one of my friends posted up something the other night on Grant Cardone. I just recently got introduced to him about 2 months ago or so, and one of my friends is like, oh, well, you got to take him with a grain of salt. Yeah, but that's how you got to do it with everything. You're not going to read any book or listen to any podcast and be like, well, this is doctrine. Grant Cardone is who he is. He's basically putting out there how he feels. I personally really enjoy a lot of what he puts out. I probably listen to him at least once a week. Flip Talk Podcast with Don Costa, I'm a huge fan. I actually got a message on Facebook from Don Costa asking if he could interview me for his podcast. And I personally hadn't listened to it. I did the interview with him, listened to my interview because I don't know, maybe narcissistic or something. And then I started listening to other interviews that he had done. He actually just interviewed a friend of mine, Dean Rogers. His podcast got posted up yesterday. I listened to that last night. And it's amazing if you're looking at it from whether it's fix and flips, whether it's marketing angles, adjustments, anything dealing with real estate investing. Don Costas, the Flip Talk podcast is fantastic. Gary V. The Gary V audio experience. Gary Vaynerchuk is pretty fantastic. I think, 1, he's inspirational. 2, he's pretty straight in your face. And 3, when you start talking about the adjustments and where the marketing is going, I think it's a must. The Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. I'm a huge fan. Michael Quarles is one of the most amazing guys that I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know. And anything he puts out, I support it. I started listening to Michael Quarles it's probably been three or 4 years now, 3 or 4 years ago. And it's such a unique and diverse angle from the typical stuff that you hear. Now, what I would say, a lot of the real estate investing podcasts that are out there, there's always some type of upsell, and they're giving you just enough to where you start reaching out and engaging. Now, here's the thing. Podcasting, it's a form of lead capture and funneling, right? It's business. It is what it is. But what I really dig about Michael Quarles, even though he has all of these other products, that he's able to provide to investors and even real estate agents, he doesn't hold back on the information that he gives on his podcast, and it's fantastic. You can find him on YouTube too. I watch his YouTube stuff. I have a couple podcasts in here just strictly for meditation. I do different variations of meditation, probably not the meditation people would traditionally think you should be doing, but I don't really care. It's my life. I'll do it the way I want to. You're not bossing me, meditation people. But I do. I have a couple meditation podcasts on there. Huge fan of Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets podcast. If you're not on biggerpockets.com and you're looking at real estate investing, or if you're a real estate agent, you should be on Bigger Pockets. It's probably one of the most put together best websites that are out there for real estate investors and real estate in general, and their podcast is just hot fire. Coach Tom Ferry. So I'm on the Tom Ferry program. I have been for a little while, not too long. I might do a quick video down the road on what I think about coaching. I've had 3 different coaches now, and I would say 2 out of the 3 were either not effective or partially effective. Tom Ferry program is pretty damn good for what I've gotten out of it and what I've put in. Super Agents Live. Super Agents Live is pretty fantastic. If you're a real estate agent, you're looking for just extra information and adjustments in your business. The Onion Juice podcast. I'm a big fan of the Onion Juice. I would say a lot of the stuff that I started implementing to our business about a year ago came from listening to the Onion Juice. Ran by a great guy. He's Neil Mathwig. He's on Facebook. I listened to his podcast. I connected with him over Instagram first, and then got him on Facebook, and I kind of follow him a lot. Top agent interviews. I'm a big fan if you're a real estate agent. The Ziglar Show. Okay, so the Ziglar Show, pluses and negatives. I'm a huge Zig Ziglar fan. I download a lot of Zig Ziglar books. I own a lot of his books, a lot of his speeches and seminars. The Zig Ziglar Show is kind of like this mashup of people talking about stuff and then like clipping in or editing in different variations of Zig Ziglar and what he's talking about. I listen to it. I wouldn't say that I'm overrun by it. I'd rather just listen to Zig Ziglar, my opinion. Cash Flow Diaries with Jay Massey. I'm a huge Jay Massey fan. If you don't know who Jay Massey is, it's Jay Massey, Massey. And I keep looking down because my phone's down here. Cash Flow Diaries is fantastic. I sat in an investor meeting, and he drove down here to San Diego. And I saw Jay Massey. I had seen him online, but I'd never met him. I was sitting in my Cadillac out in front of this meeting, and I look across. I see this beautiful Audi pull up, and there's this guy, and I'm like, I think that's Jay Massey. And this guy stops, and he starts praying. And he prayed probably for about 20 minutes. And then he got out and proceeded to get ready and went in to the meeting. It was pretty cool. He's just a great guy. Very cool approach on things. The Real Estate Strategy Lab podcast. Pretty good one. I would check it out. Here's one of my favorites. I'm a huge Norris Group fan. So Bruce Norris and Aaron Norris. Bruce Norris' father, Aaron Norris' the son. The Norris Group, which is in Riverside County, so just north of us. When I started purchasing content, when I was at a point where I thought if I start purchasing stuff, it would be beneficial to me. My first few products that I purchased were from the Norris Group to start learning about real estate investing, to get better at it, and actually study it like a profession. And I'm a huge fan. So they have real estate news and investing with the Norris Group. That's a very good one. Flip Nerd Real Estate Investing Mastermind Podcast. Flip Nerd is pretty darn good. The next one is probably my favorite that I'm listening to right now. I've been listening, and a lot of these I rotate. I'm rotating in and rotating out podcasts all the time. It's very rare when I have a podcast that I've listened to for years. This is one of the ones I've listened to for years. It's called The Real Deals with a Z podcast. The Real Deals podcast, hosted by Tucker Merrihew. The Real Deals podcast is the real deal, man. I'm a huge fan of that one. And the last one I have in my banks right now is the Advanced Selling podcast. That one's pretty good. Now, books, to jump into that because I'm almost 15 minutes. Books that I'm reading right now. 10X, Grant Cardone, pretty amazing book. The Power of Habit, That's Charles Duhigg. Pretty amazing. I'm reading The Slight Edge again. The Slight Edge was a book that was introduced to me by one of my officers when I was in the Marine Corps, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, somewhere around there. And The Slight Edge is pretty fantastic. I read that one once a year. It's just in my collection. It's something I read once a year. Just like the Red Book. So if you haven't read the Keller Williams book, everybody just calls it the Red Book, on working in real estate. That one I read once a year as well. It's huge. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership with John Maxwell. I'm reading that one right now. Pretty amazing book. How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. I read that book probably once every 2 years. I started reading that book in my early 20s when I was probably about 21, and now I'm older. It's about 20 years ago. So, okay, it was it's almost been 20 years. It was about almost 20 years ago when I started reading that one. So that's a pretty fantastic one. The E-Myth. The E-Myth was introduced to me by Sean Terry. I was hanging out with Sean Terry, and he mentioned he's like, Chris, you got to read the E-Myth. We were out to dinner in Arizona, and he told me that I had to read the E-Myth, so I picked it up. The E-Myth is something I probably read every other year as well. It's just a good book. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent is the one that I tell you. I read it every year. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Gary Keller. That's a given. So and I'm also reading Ask Gary Vee. It's actually sitting over there outside of the camera frame here. So I'm always reading. I try to read 2 to 3 books a month. I think it's important to read. I listen to at least one podcast a night. And if I'm not listening to a podcast, I'm usually trying to watch some type of YouTube video. I just think there's a lot of information. I remember when I was younger, in order to get information, it was extremely hard. You had to, the door knock people are like, hey, you want to buy the Encyclopedia Britannica? And my dad, he was really into a lot of stuff, and you had to go find a book and buy the book and read the book, and stuff wasn't really available. I would even see bookstores weren't what they are right now. You can go to Barnes & Noble, you could jump online to Amazon, but information was not readily available. Now it is, and it's to me, there's no excuse for being ignorant, and I think that's why I get really frustrated with real estate agents that are undereducated, which is, in my opinion, the majority. The majority of real estate agents are undereducated. We're surrounded by information. If you're not consuming that information to the benefit of to you and your clients and your business, I think you're goofy, and if you don't make it, that's your own fault. So that's just my opinion. Thank you for the question, Jason. I appreciate it. And if anybody else has any other questions, I'll post up stuff. Looking forward, I don't know when I'm going to post this one up, but I have a whole bunch of cool people coming on. I'm going to have Francisco Martinez on. I'm meeting up with him this weekend. He's going to be over here. I'm going to have and Francisco is like the guru of social media nationwide. I mean, he is just, if you haven't heard of him, got to check him out. I'm going to have over a few other people, property inspectors. We're going to talk about escrow, title, a few of these other things that are important to people that are looking to buy and sell homes, or people that are interested in real estate, investors, or even just real estate agents or brokers. I don't know if any brokers are listening to me. I haven't seen any, but I know a lot of agents are. So that's all I got today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I went over my time again, trying to stick to 15 minutes or less. But, so I figured I'd put it out there. Thanks again. Appreciate it. KSA Kris here with the Real Estate Blitz, and I will see you all next time.